"You're not staying here," she snapped, dragging my suitcase down the porch steps. "The bridal suite is for real family." My clothes spilled across the lawn as guests stared. Shoes tumbled into the grass. A bridesmaid covered her mouth. I stood there with my hands at my sides, watching everything I'd packed with such care scattered across that perfectly manicured property. And I swallowed my pride. I said nothing, not a single word, because I knew something she didn't. My name is Danielle Harper, and I'm 36 years old. I've worked as a high school art teacher for 12 years. Steady job, simple life, nothing flashy. I raised my son, Caleb, mostly on my own after my divorce when he was 4. I wasn't rich. I wasn't glamorous. I packed his lunches every morning before the sun came up. I worked late grading papers until my eyes burned under the desk lamp. I skipped vacations, skipped new clothes for myself, skipped everything so he could have soccer camps and cleats that actually fit. I drove a 10-year-old sedan with a cracked dashboard and paint peeling off the hood, and I was proud of it because it meant Caleb never went without. My future daughter-in-law, Vanessa, came from a polished, picture-perfect family. Country club parents. Designer dresses. Vacations in places I'd only seen in magazines pinned to my classroom bulletin board. From the very start, she treated me like I didn't belong. Like I was the embarrassing chapter of Caleb's life she wanted to rip out and throw away. She'd look at my shoes when I walked into a room. She'd smile at me the way you smile at someone you're tolerating. Still, I tried to be kind. I offered to help with wedding decorations. I spent weekends painting sample centerpiece ideas. I even contributed money quietly, writing checks directly to vendors so they wouldn't stress about the budget. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect. And that's why, when she dumped my suitcase on that lawn, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just watched. If you've ever felt judged because you weren't polished enough, hit that subscribe button. I know what it's like to stand quietly while people underestimate you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been treated like you didn't belong? Click hype. And let's step into this together. The wedding was at a rented countryside estate about 2 hours outside the city. Rolling green hills, white fences, a stone farmhouse converted into an event venue that smelled like lavender and fresh-cut wood. It was beautiful. The kind of place that looks like a painting. Caleb had told me weeks earlier that I could stay in one of the guest rooms on the 2nd floor. He'd even texted me the room number. Ide pa kakarafuli. A nice dress for the rehearsal dinner. A new blouse I'd bought on sale for the ceremony. Comfortable shoes for the reception because I knew I'd be on my feet. When I arrived Friday afternoon, the gravel crunched under my tires and the air was warm and sweet with the smell of honeysuckle growing along the fence posts. Vanessa greeted me at the front door with a smile so tight it looked like it hurt. "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "That changed. We needed the room for my cousin." I reminded her gently that Caleb had confirmed the arrangement. She rolled her eyes. "Well, plans evolve, Danielle. You understand." I didn't argue. I nodded and carried my suitcase inside anyway, thinking maybe there'd been a miscommunication. Maybe I could just find a quiet corner. Hours before the rehearsal dinner, I carried my bag upstairs to the room Caleb had mentioned. The door was open. The bed was freshly made. But my things, the overnight bag I'd left earlier in the foyer, were gone. I checked the closet. Empty. I checked the hallway. Nothing. Then I walked to the front porch and looked down at the lawn. There it was. My suitcase, unzipped and tipped on its side in the grass. Shoes scattered. My reading glasses case cracked open on the walkway. A personal photo of Caleb as a baby, one I'd tucked into the side pocket for good luck, was face down in the dirt. Guests milled around the garden nearby, and I could feel their eyes on me. One bridesmaid muttered to another, "I guess she didn't get the memo." Then Vanessa's voice rang out from the porch above, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We just don't have space for unexpected baggage." She said it like a joke. A few people laughed nervously. Caleb stood near the garden gate. He looked at me, then looked away. He said nothing. That silence from my own son hurt more than every scattered shoe on that lawn. I knelt in the grass and began quietly gathering my things. My hands trembled, but I kept my face still. I folded each piece of clothing carefully, the way I always fold things, with patience. Then a woman crouched beside me. She had a camera around her neck and kind eyes. "I saw that," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Her name was Elise. She was the wedding photographer. What Vanessa didn't realize was that Elise had been photographing candid pre-wedding moments all afternoon. Every arrival, every greeting, every unguarded expression. And some moments, once captured, can never be erased. The humiliation didn't stop on the lawn. It followed me through the entire weekend like a shadow I couldn't shake. The first thing was the rehearsal dinner that evening. The estate's dining room was warm and golden, candles flickering on long wooden tables, the smell of roasted garlic and rosemary filling the air. Families gathered, clinking glasses, exchanging stories. There was a printed program at each place setting listing the evening's toasts. Vanessa's father, Vanessa's mother, the maid of honor, the best man, 2 of Vanessa's college friends. I scanned the list twice. My name wasn't on it. I wasn't listed anywhere. I caught Caleb near the bar and asked quietly if there had been a mistake. Before he could answer, Vanessa's mother, a tall woman with a permanent expression of mild disapproval, stepped into the conversation. She placed her hand on Caleb's arm and said with a light laugh, "Some mothers just don't know when to step aside gracefully." She said it right to my face. Caleb looked at the floor. He didn't defend me. He didn't even meet my eyes. I went back to my seat and sat through every toast with my hands folded in my lap, listening to strangers talk about my son like I hadn't spent 18 years building the person they were all celebrating. The second blow came at the reception the next day. After the ceremony, which was admittedly lovely, guests filed into the reception hall. White linens, crystal glasses, a string quartet playing something soft and classical. I found my place card and followed the table number. It led me to the very back of the room. My chair was positioned next to the catering station. The clatter of plates and the hiss of steam trays were so loud I could barely hear the music. I looked toward the front. The family table was decorated with extra flowers and tall candles. Vanessa's parents sat there. Her sister, her aunt, even her second cousin, a young woman I'd never met who spent the entire dinner scrolling on her phone. But not me, not the groom's mother. When I found a quiet moment, I approached Vanessa near the dessert table and asked as gently as I could if there had been a seating error. She barely looked up. "We had to prioritize immediate family," she said. The implication landed like a stone in my chest. I wasn't considered immediate family. I was the woman who raised the groom, and I wasn't considered important enough to sit within sight of the head table. The third blow was the one that cut deepest. Later that evening, I stepped into the hallway looking for the restroom and overheard Vanessa talking to one of her bridesmaids near the coat closet. Their voices carried in the quiet corridor. "His mom didn't contribute much anyway," Vanessa said. "My parents basically funded the whole thing." I stopped walking. My stomach dropped. Because that was a lie. I had secretly paid for a significant portion of the floral arrangements. I'd written the check directly to the florist weeks ago. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted to help my son have a beautiful day. But Vanessa had taken credit for my contribution to impress her own parents. She'd erased my part entirely. I stood there in that hallway with the muffled sound of the band playing through the walls, and the faint smell of lilies drifting from the reception hall. And something inside me shifted. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something more deliberate. I wasn't going to beg for respect. I wasn't going to make a scene. I went back into the reception. I smiled in photos. I hugged guests I'd never met. I told Caleb he looked handsome. I complimented the cake. But behind every smile, I was paying attention. I was watching. And I was remembering everything. What none of them knew was that I had a quiet habit, one I'd developed over years of dealing with difficult situations. I document everything. It started long before the wedding. Months earlier, when Caleb first got engaged, I'd noticed a shift in how Vanessa spoke to me. Her texts became clipped and condescending. Her emails carried a tone that made me uneasy. So I started saving things. Not out of malice. Out of self-preservation. I saved screenshots of text messages where she mocked what she called my budget background. I kept printed receipts proving I'd paid the florist directly, with dates and transaction numbers. I even had a voicemail she'd left me by accident, One where she was talking to a friend and laughed about putting Danielle in her place before the wedding. I hadn't planned to use any of it. I just didn't want to feel crazy. I didn't want to be the woman who questioned her own memory when someone told her she was imagining things. And then there was Elise, the photographer with the kind eyes and the steady hands. She'd been watching everything unfold with her camera raised. Candid shots. Unposed. Unfiltered. I didn't know exactly what she'd captured yet. But I had a feeling. I had a plan they never saw coming. Because candid cameras don't lie. And 32 photos captured the truth no one could deny. My ally in all of this wasn't a family member. It wasn't a friend from back home. It was Elise, the wedding photographer. After the reception ended and guests drifted toward their cars or their rooms, Elise found me sitting alone on a bench near the garden. The night air was cool and carried the faint scent of damp earth and dying flower petals. Crickets hummed in the hedgerows. She sat down beside me and said quietly, "Danielle, what she did wasn't right. None of it." Elise had been in the wedding industry for 20 years. She told me she'd seen things like this before. Brides who turned weddings into power plays. Families who used seating charts as weapons. She'd photographed joy and she'd photographed cruelty, and she knew the difference. Then she pulled out her camera and showed me the preview screen. The images were sharp and undeniable. Vanessa mid-stride, dragging my suitcase by the handle across the porch. My clothes scattered on the grass in clear detail. Guests frozen in uncomfortable stares. Me on my knees in the lawn, gathering my belongings with a face so controlled it almost looked peaceful. But my eyes told a different story. Elise also mentioned she'd captured audio snippets during the candid video footage she'd recorded throughout the day. Short clips. Background voices. Vanessa's voice among them, sharp and dismissive. "If you ever need these," Elise said, looking me in the eye, "they're yours. Every single one." I thanked her. I didn't cry. I just nodded and looked up at the stars. Meanwhile, Vanessa grew more confident with every passing hour. She posted photos on social media the next morning, calling it the most perfect wedding ever. She tagged everyone except me. Caleb called me briefly to thank me for not making drama. He said it like I should be grateful. They believed they had already won. They believed I would go home quietly, teach my classes, and fade into the background of their shiny new life. But Elise and I had something powerful. We had proof. The next morning, there was a farewell brunch at the estate for close family and the wedding party. Pastries and fruit on silver trays. Mimosas in crystal flutes. The smell of fresh coffee and warm butter filled the sunlit room. Vanessa was glowing. She moved through the gathering like a queen, accepting compliments, laughing with her bridesmaids, kissing Caleb on the cheek for the cameras. As part of the brunch, Elise had been asked to prepare a slideshow of candid wedding highlights. Vanessa had personally insisted on it. She wanted everyone to see the beautiful, spontaneous memories of her perfect day. The projector hummed to life. The first few photos were lovely. The ceremony. The first dance. The cake cutting. Guests laughed and pointed and whispered sweet things. Then about halfway through the tone shifted. Photo number 1 in the new sequence showed my suitcase in midair, tumbling down the porch steps. A few people leaned forward. Photo 5 showed Vanessa standing on the porch, her arm extended, finger pointing toward the lawn. Her expression wasn't polished. It was sharp. Cold. Photo 12 showed the guests standing in the garden. Their faces frozen in visible discomfort, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Murmurs rippled through the brunch. Someone set down their fork. Vanessa's smile vanished. She leaned toward Elise and whispered sharply, "Why are these in here? Take them out." Elise didn't flinch. She looked at Vanessa calmly and said, "They're part of the day. You asked for candid moments." Then came a short video clip. The room went still as Vanessa's voice played through the speakers, crystal clear. She needs to learn her place. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. The only sound was the ticking of a wall clock near the kitchen doorway. I stood up slowly. My chair didn't scrape. My voice didn't shake. I was calm. I was steady. "I paid for the flowers," I said gently, and I placed a stack of printed receipts on the table in front of me. The florist's invoice. My bank statement. The thank you email from the vendor. Then I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail. Vanessa's own laughter filled the room, followed by her voice saying she was going to put me in my place. Caleb's face went pale. His hand gripped the edge of the table. Vanessa tried to laugh it off. She looked around the room searching for allies, but no one laughed with her. Her own parents stared at the table. Her mother's jaw was tight. Her father removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "You humiliated me," I said quietly. "In front of strangers. In front of family. You threw my belongings on the ground and told people I didn't matter." I paused. "But you also exposed yourself. Because every moment was captured. And the truth doesn't care about your version of the story." For once, no one interrupted me. The perfect image Vanessa had spent months curating cracked wide open in front of every person who mattered to her. I didn't yell. I didn't call her names. I didn't flip a table or throw a glass or do anything she could later use to paint me as the villain. I simply gathered my purse, pushed in my chair, and looked at Caleb. "I love you," I said. "I have always loved you. But I won't shrink myself for anyone. Not even for your comfort." Then I walked out of that brunch and drove home with the windows down and the radio off, listening to nothing but the sound of the highway and my own steady breathing. Weeks later, Caleb called. His voice was different. Quieter. Heavier. He said he was sorry. He admitted he'd seen the red flags and ignored them because it was easier than fighting. He said he was ashamed of his silence. I told him I forgave him. And I meant it. But I also told him that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, and that I would need time before things felt normal again. I went back to my classroom. I painted with my students. I graded papers. I rebuilt my peace one quiet day at a time. Vanessa's reputation in her social circle shifted dramatically after that brunch. The photos and the voicemail spread through whispered conversations and sidelong glances. She couldn't control the narrative anymore. I learned something powerful through all of it. Silence isn't weakness when it's strategic. Patience isn't passivity when you're gathering your strength. They thought I was small because I was quiet. They thought I had nothing because I didn't fight back in the moment. But quiet women can carry undeniable proof. And sometimes 32 honest photos speak louder than a lifetime of pretending. If you've ever been embarrassed in front of others while people stood by and pretended it was just a joke, I see you. I know that feeling. The heat in your face. The lump in your throat. The way you smile because crying would give them exactly what they want. Share your story in the comments. Tell me what happened and how you handled it. Subscribe if you're done staying silent about disrespect. Click hype to help this story reach others who need to hear it. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype you give this video helps empower someone else who's been told they don't matter. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for reminding me that none of us have to stand alone.